Thursday night, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. You know what time it is. It's time for ThoughtFLOW. I feel like I really need a soundtrack. Dun, 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 dun. Maybe I won't sing it, but we definitely need a soundtrack. Hi, Brian. Hi, Robin. Hey, Chuck. The gang is all here, and Nikki is here too. So we're in so many things to discuss. Big things, in my opinion, because we are living in big times.
Hello.
Hello, darling. How are you?
I am good. I have missed you guys.
I know, right? It's been pretty sad not being with our peeps. So we're super glad to be here. But before I go any farther, I have to say to my partner in parlance, she who has many names, many of them are last names actually. Happy anniversary. I know it's a couple of days late, but ThoughtFLOW's on Thursdays for now.
Oh, thank you.
I know our gang out here would love to say happy anniversary. So I wanted to say it on behalf of all of us because we remember when you got married last year. So I feel like
My secret.
it's our whole marriage. Maybe not. That's a little weird. This is absolutely strange. Okay. I take it back.
Would that make us polyamorous?
Long distance I don't know. It probably doesn't. I'm gonna say no. But Robin, what
Thank
was
you,
your
Robin.
anniversary?
1 year.
1 year of bliss and joy and storm.
Yes, lots of storm.
Thruple. Oh, there you go.
Well, but if it was like all of our audience, would that be multi-amorous?
It would be very complex.
Mega amorous.
Yes. We'll just hugs from afar. How about that? So anyway, I have to say being off is so strange because, I was on vacay last week. You had stuff and we just decided to take it off. But I kind of just like shambled around and was like,
Yeah, it's like, what do you do on this Thursday?
this is Thursday. What am I doing sitting here talking to myself? Because nobody else talks to me around here. Damn it. Hi, Kevin. How are things in Santa Fe? I hope you're staying safe down there. Things are kind of going bananas again. And speaking of bananas, I was in Florida, the house of bananas, and it was pretty bananarific. I have got to say, there was no COVID in Florida. None. I mean, they're living their best 2019 they've ever lived down there. I mean, and it was truly something because, standing on top of each other in line, like the whole 9 yards. I was so happy to get to my Airbnb, which I didn't leave until it was time to leave. I was thrilled about it.
Nice.
Different place.
Yeah, different place. So, don't they reportedly have the highest numbers?
The highest numbers, the highest number of children. They took Melania's Be Best and they went for it. They're like, we're going to be bestest.
Tis.
Yeah, and I guess, go big or go home, but I wouldn't want to go to the ER.
We should pick. We should pick and choose. We should be a little bit more selective about what we go big or go home about.
Right. I prefer to stay home, but Kevin, sorry to hear that. See, our numbers here in southwestern PA, we are definitely in a bubble. I think we're at like 75%, 80%, and that's like a good thing compared to a lot of other places. But
that's a lot.
It's still a lot. It's a lot, and considering the number of hospitals we have here, we have crazy number. Oh, damn. Kevin said refer to her as melanoma and
I think
done.
We
She
should
will
have
be melanoma
awards.
from this day forward.
We should have ThoughtFLOW awards for best comment of the evening.
Well,
That
so far, Kevin gets the half-eat bag of chips award for that one, because that's good. I mean, you guys are gonna have to work hard to top melanoma. But I gotta close these chips because, you know, you can't let
the air waft past your nose because I love these to play.
Listen, I have a whole plate of them right here. I'm looking at them. Second. Kevin, you and I, we're going to get together. We are having tequila time. It is going to happen. So don't mark the date because we'll probably have to change it. But then we'll mark another date later. So, yeah. And it's all of that that brought me to this topic for tonight because, you know, I talked, what?
We must name our award for the evening the ThoughtFLOW Fluffer Award.
I'm going to write that down.
In honor of Misty.
Okay, we'll remember that. Harmony's probably on it as we speak. Mariska's here. Hello. Hi, Jennifer. Yes, so far it's to Kevin Bone with melanoma, but anybody can come in with the best term or phrase of the evening.
Absolutely.
But we're starting off with compassion fatigue. And this is a really big deal for so many reasons. To me, it's just a really good thing to debate because I am personally of the belief that compassion fatigue is just a really good way to give yourself an excuse for saying, I don't give two squiggles about fill in the blank.
Poops. Yep.
No, yes, two poops, no poops to give. And and I think that
hey, Robin,
when we look at everything, hi Robin, when you look at everything that's going on right now, I can say that it's easy to run out of compassion, right? Because this is a lot and we've been going through it for a long time. It's like enough is enough. But I think, and I'd love to hear everybody's opinions, but to me, I don't think that we're experiencing compassion fatigue collectively. Individually, yes, but collectively, no. I just think people are being honest. I think that, you know, people have felt the things that they're saying for a long, long time. And they're just now feeling like they have permission or a scapegoat in which to direct it. For example, you know, sucks for your kid. Your kid gets sick. Oh man, good luck. But my kid is not wearing a mask because your kid might get sick. But, oh, clutch my pearls. My kid has a peanut allergy. So you can't bring your peanuts to school. But my kid's not going to wear a mask.
Right.
Asking for compassion or expecting it, but not having the empathy to give it. Is that compassion fatigue or is that bad behavior? Hi, Tammy.
No, that's bad behavior because, you know, when I'm not tired of being compassionate, like I'm genuinely not tired of being compassionate. Not when the compassion is necessary because the person who needs it, it's warranted. I am not tired of being compassionate. I am tired of people who are tired of the trend towards compassion, trendy compassion, trendy passion. That's what I'm tired of, you know, and
Fake
I'm not
compassion.
Yes, faux, however you would like to, you know, poo-poo passion. So it's people who basically were like, isn't this over yet? Aren't we done with this? I tried, you know, I tried to wear my Black Lives Matter Starbucks mask. You know, I tried. I tried to, you know, walk past a protest and wave a peace sign and pretend like I was a part of it for that moment. I took my selfie as if I were a part of the crowd. these were people who were not compassionate to begin with. These are people who were, how does this best serve me in this moment in time? Oop, that moment is gone. Okay, I'm done.
Your 15 minutes of compassion are over.
It's like, no, it's not, because so a friend of mine and we were talking today, and my friend is like 71 years old. And we were talking about the age thing, and these milestones that you reach when you get to a certain point. And my dad sort of said his age to me backwards, and he said, in 6 years I'll be 90. And I know that my dad is 84, but when he said in 6 years I'll be 90, I went, oh, okay. And it was like weird and scary, which is no different than saying he's 84, right? But
Right.
it's all of these things that you hear people say, back in the day, but people are like, back in the day when Nirvana, and I'm like, wait, that's not back in the day, but it is back in the day. But it's the thing that struck me was when we speak about certain things that we're speaking about, especially under the umbrella of COVID, back in the day, people used to die from diseases that were eradicated because of vaccines. Back in the day.
Right.
Back in the day, present time, there are people still alive who are polio survivors. So it's just a weird thing. It's like, 15 minutes of, poo-poo passion. And I'm sorry that it didn't end as quickly.
That poopery.
Yes. Actually, no, because that actually serves a good function. That actually works. And it actually, but
I mean, that's the compassionate choice, is poopery.
yes, poopery is the compassionate choice. But no, it's people who wanted it to be over, but they wanted it to be over. And you could spread this across multiple circumstances. They wanted it to be over, but they didn't want to have to do anything I'm not even going to say do the work. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't want to do anything to be uncomfortable, or they didn't want to do anything to be sort of put out, but they wanted it to be over.
Over on their terms.
Correct. And for the record, there are people who cannot be vaccinated, or they have to have like quadruple doses, because we're all getting the third dose, but now they're because they're immunocompromised. Well, here's the deal about herd immunity. If you thin the herd no longer has immunity. So for the people,
you thin the herd, if you thin out the ones that don't contribute to the immunity.
It is humid.
I'm just watching my hair grow as I sit here. Actually,
fabulous.
Thank you. But if you thin the herd, eventually you're left only with those that have taken the steps to get to herd immunity, essentially, and so eventually you get there.
I mean, thin the herd in terms of the number of people who have decided, no, we don't need to vaccinate, which is ridiculously scary, because that you need a certain percentage of the population, a significant percentage of the population, in order for herd immunity to exist. So when whole clumps of people, like a big old nappy clump, when whole clumps of people decide they don't want to be vaccinated because they don't remember back in the day when people died from these diseases, they don't remember that.
Do they not remember though? Because you know what? There are people with polio who have survived polio that are still here. There are people still get tuberculosis, so
people still get cholera. There's a lot of things that people,
I don't think it's a matter of them not remembering. I think it's absolutely a choice to want this whole freedom idea, and I'm going to exercise my free will come hell or high water. It's like when a toddler wants a lollipop. Now, and I just realized I cut you off, but I cut you off because Mariska is here. And
Mm-hmm.
Mariska, I hope you don't mind my saying this, but you're pretty public about it. You know, she says here, those of us who needed herd immunity are not okay. Mariska's my friend. Proud to call her my friend because she does amazing things for like everybody. And she's super smart, and we're lucky to have her on the planet. It chaps my ass to the
Uh-oh.
point of madness that this friend of mine has to worry so much about everything now because somebody doesn't want to listen to facts. And so where I have compassion fatigue, I guess, and it's not really compassion fatigue in as much as it's bullshit fatigue. Like in a lot of cases, I can't make the space for somebody that can do it, sees what the need is, and refuses to do anything about it. I feel the same way about gun legislation. I feel the same way about a lot of things. It's not about you. If we're supposed to be a society, we have to be working together to form a safety net. And we know that the
Correct.
government's not going to do that for us. So we have to do that ourselves. We have to protect the people next to us and down the street and over the corner and our children. But if you take a look at the fact that people are getting into fistfights, actual coming to blows and ripping masks off of children, how far have we sunk when we're in a place where we will rip the mask off of a child because we don't like the fact that their mother put a piece of cloth on their face to protect them? Sorry.
But it's also, I think that some people don't remember because we have forgotten to tell stories. And the reason that I say this is because a lot of people who don't want to vaccinate in general are under the age of 50. And what they are, the interesting thing is what they are relying on is the herd immunity. They are relying on the herd immunity when they speak to the effect of
I can't with you. I can't with you, Harmony.
What they are relying on is the fact that these diseases are not present. And when I hear the argument that the body is designed to protect itself, yes, but not against nuclear fallout. So we have these protective layers, but this is not the planet Earth of 20 years ago. This is not the planet Earth of 100 years ago. So the irony of their statements of the body is designed to protect itself, but you're using other people's bodies to protect you and to stand on your laurels of not wanting to be vaccinated against anything. And then to perpetuate that, a lot of anti-vaxxers are actually under the age of 50. It's not baby boomers, because baby boomers know. They're like, oh, no, we know people that were in the iron lung. No, shoot them up. Get your shit. So, but that's not the experience here in this country anymore because of vaccinations. That's why when people go round and round and round, and I'm like, but you don't see people with smallpox and how devastating it was because there's a vaccine. That's why you don't see it. You don't see people with tuberculosis because we're so anal about screening for it. But now go to another country. Hey, let's go to Haiti right now. Let's ask them how they feel about tuberculosis.
And cholera.
Right. So these are not diseases. Let's go to the Middle East, which has been war-torn, where people who are trying to administer vaccinations are being killed as if the vaccinations are government hoax or, the Westerners, where these diseases that we've been able to eradicate here are running rampant over there. But they're running rampant because of people just saying, no, that's a hoax.
Right.
And so the very idea that someone, it's like, I think that's the thing that really bothers me about people who are so staunchly anti-vaccination is like, but you're using my person, you're using me and my kids and my husband and my baby's daddy and all of the people who I know who are vaccinated, you're using us as your podium that you're standing on. You have protection because people are vaccinated.
Absolutely.
This is a small example of what happens when they said, if you don't get the vaccine for COVID, it will do what, viruses do. It'll twirl. And that's what it's doing. Ask someone who knows someone who was HIV. We know when HIV became a thing because of our ages. We know when this really was widespread, and we know people who died from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
HIV is now a chronic illness.
Yeah.
The expectation is not that you're going to succumb to AIDS-related illnesses. It is something that you are expected to live with.
Right.
That was not what it's a virus. It just kept ducking and dodging, and
they commit crimes of opportunity. And as long as they have, smorgasbords available, they're going to go eat.
And that's why I don't understand why people are so, there are all of these things. And the fact that they could find a vaccine, that they could create a vaccine, because we know that there is no vaccine for HIV, or at least not one that they'll tell us about. So the fact that they could find
swear to God,
the fact that they could find a vaccine, which is not new, we'll repeat it. The COVID vaccine is not new. It is from when there was going to be an outbreak, 16, 17 years ago at this point, that SARS outbreak that was going to happen. There is no vaccine for HIV. I've just been out of the loop. Because I know so many people living with it. It's not for the people that I know in the communities that I'm with, it does not hold the shame and the stigma. What was that, like early 80s? So that was a long time
through the
ago.
90s, yeah.
Yeah. And so early 80s when we first started hearing about it as GRID, and then now yes. And they've diminished the cocktails, because remember, the cocktail actually used to be this huge, just hunk of mess of pills that you had to take. So
and you'd get sick, and it was kind of like robbing Peter to pay Paul, which was worse. And now, now, and on top of it, now they have PrEP. There's so many things, but look at how long it took to get there. And
look at Robin trying to pull a Harmony. She's like, bam,
yeah, Harm,
bam,
you're slacking over
bam,
there. Damn. Robin might need a reward for that, an award.
Mariska just wrote, please, plus people aren't thinking of what COVID will do 10 years later in someone who had a mild case. Chickenpox equals shingles equals Bell's palsy. They think MS is caused by Epstein-Barr.
Which, and that's the other piece that I think people are missing. People are saying, oh, well, you get the vaccine, in 5 years, you might turn green, and then bolts will come out of your neck, and then you'll get bad fashion, and then you'll be Frankenstein.
But in 5 days, you might succumb to COVID and be on a ventilator and die.
Well, but, it's like the argument of, my body is my temple, and God made it this way, and I'm not supposed to put anything into my body, says the person with tattoos.
Oh, hey.
Well, you're not saying that, so it's okay. But we all know that tattoo ink travels.
Yes.
We don't know where it's ending up. We don't know what it does down the road, and it has a different effect on every body.
Yes.
So, I think the whole idea of what Mariska says here, Epstein-Barr. Nobody really knew what that was. Everybody thought the only way you could get mono was from kissing somebody. Remember? Oh my God, she has mono, that slut, back in the 80s. Well, now we know better. Now we know that
Right.
you can get it not from kissing. And P.S., they really are starting to draw more, I would say, more solid links between MS and Epstein-Barr. That's a big deal because MS, you don't get rid of it. It is lifelong. We don't know what this will do long term.
Right.
And so then, are you going to want, getting back to the piece of compassion, like, if you have decided at this stage in your life, however old you are right now, that, hey, I'm just going to take my chances with the disease, with the coronavirus, because I'll be fine. Most people, 99% of the public are kicking it. It's not that big of a deal, but we don't know what happens that 99% in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. We don't have the answers. Now, do we know what the vaccine does? No, but we do know, again, we know more about that than we do the coronavirus, if you ask me.
And I think that because this is not small, there are people who are succumbing to the vaccine. There are people who are having bad effects. Okay.
And dying.
What
is true.
Yes. This is not false, right? Of course it isn't false. But it's not the vast majority of people. Number one. Number two, we don't know, none of us knows what dormant thing we have laying in our bodies that could spark something if you come into contact with something. I know that I'm allergic to avocados because I ate it. I remember exactly where I was. I got a salad. I was in the Capizio. I was in the boutique Capizio store at the old Ailey building. And I thought my head was going to explode. It's so visceral. I remember it, but I didn't think I was allergic to avocado. I'm like, oh, everybody says this is good. So there are going to be people who have reactions. There are people who are allergic to penicillin. So then should we just not use it? For the benefit that it would give? Yes, there are people who are allergic to penicillin. My husband is allergic to penicillin.
Yeah.
So, and I remember that sticks into my head because we know that it is a very common antibiotic that is given. We try very hard not to take antibiotics, but some things require it. But should we not use penicillin because there's a smaller percentage of people who are going to have a negative reaction? Or should we just ask those people to make sure that they are identifying themselves? And it's this idea that people keep plucking, well, this person died from the COVID vaccine. This person had this reaction to the COVID vaccine. And to that, I say, okay, but look at how many people are able to really, really be impacted in a positive way by the COVID vaccine.
Well, and they're not saying, and that's why the argument is more nuanced than that, I think. They're not saying, take it off the market, this is the worst thing ever. They're just saying, I'm not going to subscribe to that poison that you're trying to inject into me with microchips in it. Now, and I make light of it because I think that's completely ridiculous, but your point is sound. I know two people actually who have loved ones who died. Voltaren is a topical pain medication. It's a topical NSAID. Works great unless you're allergic to it. But I know
so it's not a pill that you ingest. It's okay.
No.
Okay.
I know two people who've lost loved ones. In both cases, the doctor said unequivocally, You've got to get this into the VAERS index because this is definitely a vaccine related reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those people, though they struggled with it and it took them a long time to get around to it,
Mm-hmm.
they did get vaccinated. And the reason why, well, there's multiple reasons why. Both of them have, one is young kids, one has medium young kids, middle school age. I'm having a word problem tonight. I think it's because these chips are tempting me.
Got those medium kids.
That's the medium kids, yes. So, I think in a lot of cases there are nuanced reasons why people don't and people haven't and people shouldn't. Those people I can have compassion for because you can see where they're laboring over decisions
Right.
based on facts, based on personal experience.
Right.
Not, I read from Dr.
Right.
Tutsi that, they tested that on, literally, I read this the other day. There are chimpanzee bits, not like male parts bits, but there are bits of like ground up chimpanzees in the vaccine, and therefore we shouldn't take it. It's an animal rights issue. And I just looked for the nearest car to throw myself in front of because it was the most absurd thing I'd ever heard. Like, I can't with it. And I explained to her what she was saying and how it was wrong and how, what they did. It's a long story, but essentially it was a part of the delivery mechanism. It was not bits of chimpanzee. But I mean, this person, I even went online and found the facts and texted them to her. And she was still like, no, because, I understand that your information comes directly from Oxford University. But how do we know that they're not in on the conspiracy?
Misty, would you explain what the index is so that people
Oh,
know?
yeah. So there is a database where you submit information based on adverse reaction. So it's the vaccine adverse reaction E something. But you submit your adverse reactions to this index and you have to submit doctor's information and support and all of these things. And I think this is a big thing. A lot of people don't even know this exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is where I understand this much. This is where I have this much compassion for people who are clueless, that don't know or don't realize or feel like vaccine injuries aren't taken seriously. They are. The government, unfortunately, though, makes it a point to squirrel this information away.
Right.
You
They
have to
do.
pretty much stand on the left corner of your face to find out that there is a way to report these things and eventually, potentially, be compensated for it. You should be compensated if there's an adverse event that could have been seen, speculated about, whatever. But, again, at the end of the day, there's mistrust. That mistrust doesn't come from nowhere, but you have to measure it. Like, there has to be common sense applied. Ground up chimpanzees, not really a thing, considering they're endangered and all of that. But if you can't figure that out, how am I supposed to expect you to believe that Robin and I aren't in some sort of cahoots with space lasers?
I want to respond to Robin's people are worried about bits of chimpanzee being in the vaccine, but not concerned with what's in the hot dogs they eat. That is a huge. I wanted to bring this up because the US government allows so much chemical, so much pesticide, just so much
Contamination from
stuff. Yeah.
feces.
Acceptable levels of pus. Why is that even like a sentence, right? In other countries where they look at what is acceptable in our food source and things that were banned not like 2 years ago, things that were banned decades ago in other countries' food sources, but you have an issue, not that I believe that there are chimpanzee bits, but you have an issue with a vaccine and what could be in it. But the average American, and yes, my lovelies, I understand that you guys are not the average American, but the average American consumes the worst quality of food, whether intentionally or unintentionally,
At least
because
dense, by the way.
what is allowed in our children's food in the public school system is criminal.
Bubkiss.
It is criminal. And, you know, people are like, how do you get your kids to take their lunch to school? And I'm like, my kids have always taken their lunch. And when they eat something that is not like, you know, super high quality, they're a little bougie. They're a little bougie. But I don't mind that. If my kids can detect poor quality food from before they even have to take a bite, I'm more than okay with that.
Right.
Because what is acceptable for a school lunch really isn't food. And so I'm amazed and disgusted at times what people will allow their children to consume, but they don't want them to wear masks and they don't want them to be vaccinated.
Yeah, I think, and it's like what I was saying about the tattoos, things we put on our skin. You know, your concern about a vaccine, okay, fine, but if you get your nails painted and you use the general, you know, top 5 brands, I'd say top 3 at this point, most of them have the 7 deadly chemicals in them.
Yes.
Your fingernails and toenails absorb that polish. You want to talk about poison over time? You know, people who get gel nails, sorry if I'm calling any of you out. You know, let it go. It's just a point. Acrylics. How many sat in nail salons? How many still sit in nail salons and suck in that acrylic stench into their pores, into their body? It's not just the nose. You're absorbing it through your skin.
And the
yes.
nail techs speak about neurological
Yes.
diminishment that they have and are experiencing. Nail techs actually
Rain
speak,
fog.
yes, they
Huge
actually
deal.
speak it. And I was never someone, I can count the times that I've got a mani-pedi on one hand. I'm just not someone who does that. I don't do it on my own. I don't do it. I'm just not someone who does that. Um, it's all of the things that we do. Black women, creamy crack, if you're getting your hair relaxed, if you're getting any kind of chemical process done, your scalp is very sensitive because it, you know, unless you shave your head, it doesn't really see the light of day. Unlike, you know, skin that is more exposed to the sun. And whatever you put in your hair, it's literally just soaking in. It doesn't even have to travel, right? It doesn't have to travel. Your brain's right there. People make choices and people do a lot of things that they justify and they're okay with it because it's what suiting them in that moment in time.
Right. You can make excuses for something
Yeah.
if it suits your needs. I mean, at the end, we are animals, right? If it suits your needs, if you can sham it into your alignment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how many times have you seen a situation and just kind of walked away from it because, hey, it's not happening to you because it was inconvenient. That's another place where your alignment is compromised because it didn't suit your needs to be aligned at that moment.
And if that was something that is important to you, there's somebody at my window and I was just trying to figure out who it was. Oh, that's my husband. Okay.
Vaccine.
If it's something that's important to you, if someone told you you can't, if someone told my cousin that she could not bleach her hair, she's this beautiful, tall, you've seen her, striking Black woman. If someone told my cousin that she couldn't bleach her hair, I think she would like take just massive issue with that.
Right.
It's a part of her persona. But if you're willing to protest because someone says you can't bleach your hair, which my cousin would not, by the way, because someone says you can't bleach your hair or you can't do that because it's your person. And because people do object to things like this, people loudly object to things like this. People loudly object to being able to do what they should be able to do to their bodies.
Right.
Understood. I get that. But me having tattoos doesn't affect this other person over here. If there are consequences to my tattoos, however many years down the road, it doesn't, that's something onto my body.
Right.
You know, it doesn't put someone else in harm's way.
Right.
But not wearing a mask puts someone else in harm's way.
Right.
Period. And you
Well,
don't know, and not someone, some ones.
yeah, but the counter argument is, you know what? If you have compromised, then you should stay at home. This is what really chapped me. Again, here we go. The whole situation with the medical workers, the doctors in Florida that went on strike, the nurses that, they're interviewing that are crying in puddles on the ground. They're like, we can't keep doing this. We're out of gas.
Right.
I mean, I have a ton of compassion for them. When do they get to say, Uncle, I can't? Because listening to a local school board meeting, one of the angry, angry statements, these are my rights. One of the angry statements made was, well, those people chose to be in the medical field. My child did not choose to wear a mask to school. And don't anybody shoot me. I'm just repeating it because it's so preposterous. I didn't want to have to toil in it alone.
Well, okay. So, um, my kids are bused to school, but my kids at this particular school, the middle schoolers, they can either bus, they can walk, they can ride their bikes, or I can drive them. Notice I put that at the end of the list. Well, so my eighth grader gets on, and the next day he's like, "Oh my God, Mom, the bus is so crowded." And because my kids are siblings, I have a sixth grader and an eighth grader in the same school. They want them to share that seat at the very back, that little seat. And I'm like, well, dang, I'm glad it's skinny. But my eighth grader, he's like, Mom, he's like, the bus is just crowded. And he went on and started this whole rant about them being incompetent. And I said, I said, Aries, have you noticed the signs that says, hiring for school bus drivers? And he's like, yeah, I've seen them. And I said, have you noticed those signs? And he said, yes, I've seen them. And I said, they're hiring for school. I said, your bus is crowded because they don't have enough school bus drivers. They don't have enough school bus drivers because people are hesitant about working with the youth population because there are so many people. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, don't wear a mask, wear a mask. I don't want to wear a mask, right? And I said, so typically those are people, anyone who can drive a school bus, they're not independently wealthy. Okay. I said, these are essential workers and they have to make sure that they can keep working. And sitting on a bus that has a capacity to seat 66 children, they have to weigh that. And here's the deal. In our town, you're getting to school, you're getting on the bus and you're getting to school like 10, 15 minutes later. That's the distance. You're not on some like over the hills and through the woods. But that's that window, right? That 15 minutes of connection with someone. So I said, there's a school bus driver shortage because some people can't take the risk that the entitled will win.
100%. Well stated. Well stated.
They cannot take the risk that they start this job, they're like, woohoo, they're like, okay, and then a month and a half down, they're like, okay, I'm good. I have this little job. It gives me some time during the day. I can work in the morning. I can work in the afternoon. I got to hit 3 schools, the elementary school, the middle school, the high school, and then I come back. Well, now in October, you know, Fanny, give me my freedom and my rights or give me death, has decided that her kids don't have to wear their masks. And her kids vacation every other long weekend in Florida.
It's a thing.
And it's a thing. And
yeah.
Some people cannot afford that.
Right.
And so the consequence of that is a crowded school bus. And I said, Aries, while the weather is warm, you and your brother can ride your bikes. Or Aries, you can walk. I said, this is a privilege.
Hi,
This
Mark.
is a privilege. Hey, Martini. And so getting him to like pause, and I'm like, I will bring you to school some days and pick you up. I said, I will do that because of this circumstance. I said, it's not going to be every day. I said, but what you're experiencing is a privilege. So it's, the kids are compliant, and that's the really interesting thing. The kids are compliant.
Right.
And oh man, at that high school where those babies want to play those sports, they are like,
don't take my sports ball away.
I mean, this campus, you would think you were in the middle of a school day with the number of kids that are still on campus at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And oh, whoop, whoop, I got to give a shout out. Wheaton Warrenville South High School. There are 2 girls who just started playing on the football team. They are an inclusive team.
Wow.
Whoop, whoop. Yep. So, no, it's very, it's not the kids. It's not the kids.
It's not the kids.
It's freaking Franny, give me my freedom or give me death. The kids are like, no, I want to play volleyball, baseball, softball, football, whatever ball. They want to just do their thing.
And then is this creating, aside from creating an issue where people can't learn to self-soothe and all of these other things, is this creating a level of trauma in these kids because they've got these issues foisted upon them that aren't really theirs? They're being told, they're being groomed that this is a problem when they know better. I have not met one kid that
just all up in the video.
now I'm like, I thought it was thunder. I was like, oh no, not again. But you know, how many of these kids who've been told the boogeyman is lurking in their mask, how many of them are going to have issues down the road being traumatized by their parents acting like savages over something like this? What are we doing collectively to the next generation as we continue to not get along?
So here's the really interesting thing, and this is something, it's, you know, it's kind of like my own little personal in my head social experiment, because some of these kids, a lot of kids are very super entitled, like that, they just are. Just are. But some of these kids are taking a step back and saying, what are we doing? I don't think it's a big deal to wear a mask.
Right.
Some of these kids are taking a step back and saying, this is okay. This is not bothering me, especially after this past year where there was so much online learning and kids are like, no, this doesn't work.
I will do whatever it takes to get back into school. I don't care. Yeah.
that is something that I've heard from the vast majority. Like they were like, okay, let's just check this box. E-learning didn't work. We're just going to check, mom, dad, we're just going to check that box because that was not successful on any level. It was not successful, especially when you're talking about high school kids. It was not successful trying to figure out how do I apply for college?
Hmm.
How do I get this stuff done in the way that I need to get it done? All of the things that if you've ever applied for college on behalf of a child, um, it's one thing we know. E-learning didn't work. They missed the camaraderie of even if they weren't kids who played sports or were involved in band or orchestra or any other extracurricular activity, right? The
Hmm.
camaraderie of being with their friends, being with their peers, even if they weren't their friends, just being with those people that, brain the same way that they brain or similarly, right? To the naysayer parents, I'm like, where's your compassion? Where's your compassion for your child's experience? And regardless, our children's experience will not be our experience. They don't understand I walked 10 miles with my little brother on my back to get to school. We didn't do that either, but we all say that. These kids are like, what do you mean you walked 10 miles? School's like 2 miles away. Like, why would you have to walk 10 miles? Like, the school is right there. And I'm 16 and I have my permit and I can drive.
Right.
And when I get a senior, I'm going to buy that senior parking pass so I can park on the school property. It's Their experience isn't going to be our experience. And so, where's the compassion for making their experience, however it manifests, the best experience that it can be?
Right. I mean, what's wrong with sucking it up?
And
What's
what's
wrong with
wrong
sucking
with,
up? If we're
yes.
telling kids that you have to be on a team or be a team player, is this any different?
No, they don't really mean that they have to be on a team. They mean that you have to be the best one by hook or by crook to be on the team. They're not really saying the team is accoutrement.
Well, isn't that sad? It's, and you know what? You're right. You're right. It comes back to that whole piece of rugged individualism or bust. I truly believe that we're supposed to be thinking more collectively, not like Borg or anything. Like it's not a hive mind situation, but everything
I
that we do, the
love that
people.
you just said that.
I mean, I'm a big geek, you know it. But to me, that people and vibrations and the earth and the air and the water and the fire and all of the things work together, right? And if we are extracting ourselves from that as individuals and saying, you know what, we have all of the things, but I am the God of fire, and therefore I don't need to worry about being a part of this collective experience, we lose. There's no winning. You can't beat it all by yourself. You can't.
That's not what Lori Loughlin said.
Well, look at Lori Loughlin's ass in jail. She tried. And even her kabillion-dollar attorneys and her kabillion-dollar husband and all of the things couldn't save her in the end.
Couldn't put Lori back together again.
Oh, well,
She lacked compassion for her own children. Like, how about that? Like, you are so in it that you don't even have the faith in your own child. And what is that when we talk about the repercussions, right? What is that 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road? What is that kid has to be like, oh, my mom didn't even have faith in me that I could do this. But
my
no, I
mom's
don't.
fear of judgment, my
Correct.
mom's fear of inadequacy was translated onto me, made me a laughing stock, cost me all of my endorsements.
Yep.
Oh, and P.S., I'm culpable too because I let it happen.
So I don't think that every sports mom or dance mom for that matter, because we know those, I don't I don't think when you get into these like really crazy high, you know, just kind of high end, I'm going to call them because they cost a lot of money, activities to propel your child forward. But no, sometimes I do believe that some parents feel that the team is an accessory for their child. And because we're talking about being on a team, we're talking about having compassion for those around you, being in a community, right? Being in a community is being on a team.
Right.
It is paying attention to the things that go on around you in your neighborhood, figuratively and literally, whether it's the house next door or across the street from you, or whether it's the person you're sitting next to or that you have to interact with, right? Teaching our children to be kind human beings.
Right.
Being honest with our children and saying, you're just not going to be the best at everything. And you don't need to be the best at everything. If you're going to excel at this, that doesn't mean that I want you to fail math, but you know, ride high on that C or that B minus, because there's also not enough time in the day. And so where is the compassion for the experience that we are living in right now? The compassion for the experience right now. Because if we stay in that mode of fight or flight, that will wear us out as well. And that's a part of what we're talking about too. The wavering and the digging of the heels in and the just standing there pumping your fists and having a toddler tantrum because you don't want your child to wear a mask. But we can't get through and past this experience if we don't act as a collective unit.
Yeah. And so I wonder then, you know, if we take a look at history and we take a look at other times when we've had to come together, what was it about those times that was different from today? You know, societally, why is it that at some points we're able to say, you know what, we're gonna give in a little bit? I'm thinking 9/11 and the Patriot Act. You want to talk about giving up rights? The Patriot Act was that indeed. Um, how is it that which, you know, not everybody travels, not everybody flies, not everybody does the things where they would be grossly affected by this?
Correct.
What was it about that time that is different from this time? Now, I have a couple of guesses. Social media, absolutely, Sissy, is definitely one of them, and one of the guesses that I would say. The other one that I would say is a known invader, right? We could see tangibly who the enemy was. And Brian said earlier in the queue that people don't see fighting the coronavirus as a war. And I think that was a big statement, because if you can't see it and, you know, someone's telling you it's there, and, you know, there's a whole bunch of dead bodies stuffed in a meat locker in a parking lot in New York, well, you're in Sheboygan. You don't really give a damn about what's happening in New York. It doesn't touch you. It doesn't affect you. You can't see it. It's an airborne pathogen.
Correct.
Is that why? Is that part of the reason why this is so different? Or is it, you know, a step further? Is it just a matter of we're so polarized? We're so unable to relate to our fellow people because we've been told that we really shouldn't and we really can't. You know, is this, again, is it a societal failing? Is it the inability to put your hands on it, therefore it does not exist?
It's so interwoven, right? Because no one dreamed that social media would, we back in the day when there was only dial-in internet,
Back
and
in
there
the day.
was, back in the day, right, you know, in the late 80s, it's, no one dreamed that social media would have the impact and have the weight that it does. And there was no prefacing for that. There was no preparation for that, because it was just a big fat snowball that just came barreling down the hill and just crashed into the lodge. And this is what it is. And now there are all of these circumstances that must be mitigated, because you're like, oh my gosh, every government has a social media presence, but now the government in Afghanistan is being run by the Taliban. So should they have access to the governmental social media sites? Because technically, if they're the government, then doesn't that give them? I mean, it's like, this was a question. This was a conversation on NPR. It's like, these things didn't exist. You didn't have to wonder if a terrorist organization, or a not in agreement with the government organization, or an overthrowing said government organization.
Term, not in agreement with the government organization. The long title.
I am not being naive, but I said it in that way because we know that the Black Panthers were labeled as a terrorist group. And I don't just want to throw that term around all willy-nilly, because I don't live that perspective. But it was a conversation on NPR. Now that they are the government in power, do they get all the passcodes to all the social media? This wasn't a conversation. Like, this is like a new conversation, and there are no rules, and they're making up the rules as they go. But as they're making up the rules in social media, hundreds of years on social media have gone by while they're sitting here trying to figure out what the rules are for this circumstance.
Right.
And so back in the day, during the, I don't want to call it the Spanish flu, but for lack of a better term, because we all know what I'm talking about, no one questioned wearing a mask.
No, that's not true. That's incorrect. No, when the first phase of it came around and masks were recommended, people refused to wear masks, actually. The way this has happened is almost a direct parallel to the way that happened. It's actually freaking bananas to me, because it's like, we've already seen the playbook.
Right. But the second time around, my point is, there wasn't social media for people to say, oh, you shouldn't get the vaccine.
No.
There wasn't. Yes, everything has there is always going to be a component of propaganda.
Was there a vaccine to the Spanish flu?
No.
You mean just the whole grassroots?
Yes,
okay.
just the protocol. No. Just the protocol, because this is really my point. We didn't have the science. The science wasn't the same as the science that we have now.
Right, so then again, okay, I'm gonna, you know how I like to put that hat on.
Go ahead.
I don't currently have a hat, so you're gonna get a plate of chips hat.
You truly have a plate of chips.
I told you, and I'm smelling it, I'm looking at it, I'm like, damn, I want a chip. But anyway, here's the point. Putting the hat on and saying, so what about it? The fact is, wait, what are we talking about? Shit.
Well, this was my point. Death was more in your face.
Oh, that's my point.
That's my point. The death, the dying of people and loved ones was more in your face.
But, see, and that's where social media could be beneficial, but it's not. People are out telling their stories about how they've lost people, about how this has affected them personally. People who were against the whole thing are now like, hear me as I'm croaking on my deathbed, get this shot.
Right.
And they're still being tuned out.
I just saw a story and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much layer on top of layer on top of layer. Woman, adult sons, shared a house. She got vaccinated. They didn't. These guys were in their like 30s, possibly even their 40s. These were grown-ups. These weren't like 25-year-olds, woo, I'm going to live forever. No, these are like full-fledged adults, shared a house. They didn't get the vaccine. One contracted COVID, came home, gave it to everybody. He was fine at home for a minute. Brother contracted it, went downhill fast, had to go into the hospital. Second brother, oh my gosh, He dies in the hospital. She comes home to her second son, who has died, but he has died a couple of days before. Right. And she just shook her head, because before she could mourn her children, she had to find a place to live, because she can't afford the house that they were renting together. She couldn't afford it by herself, and she had to pay to have the room cleaned where her son passed, because it was a couple of days before she got to him and realized he was deceased. So this is what this woman, who obviously does not have disposable income, this is what she has to do before she can mourn and bury her sons who didn't want to take the vaccine.
Where was the compassion for her?
But their decision, it wasn't just about her loss of her sons.
But that's the point. Her
catapulted, yes, it
didn't have enough
catapulted
thought
her.
for her. And granted, you're an individual. You have the right to do whatever it is
what you want to do.
But there's consequences in that.
Yep.
Just like this whole thing about, and I don't know if you saw it when I posted about it on Facebook. And it happened like literally 4 days after I made this post. I said, at some point, especially considering that corporations are people too now, thank you, Republicans. But at this point, since corporations are people too, the corporations have the right to protect themselves as people.
Right.
And therefore, the insurance companies are going to stop paying for your rights. Yep. And so now that we see this happening, and again, I still don't think it's enough, sadly. I think it's going to take a much bigger economic hit. But we've talked in the past about people who have to endure bankruptcy in this country because we have a shitty ass health care safety net. People, if these bills, the average bill for a person with COVID, medical bill, who has to be hospitalized, the average bill is $71,000. That will create a bankruptcy. So now your whole, and P.S., medical bankruptcy, not all medical bills can be wiped away. Tax bills can't be wiped away. There's other things that you just can't get around. So now your rights have essentially snowballed into financial ruin.
But that's not just an individual thing at that point.
You are correct.
The hospital has to generate X amount of revenue to, run the hospital.
Right. And so those expenses, who do they get passed on to? Again, they get passed on to the people who have been, and, Harmony's on the call. We talked about this earlier. The people who are doing what has been suggested or subscribed, the people that have been following the rules, painting in the lines, are the ones that will suffer because this guy has his rights. And again, I'm not talking about those with logical reasons for misbehaving. I'm talking about those that just don't like the idea of being told what to do. And P.S., I'm told what to do all the time. I don't like being told what to do. As you know, I'm not a big fan of pants in the summertime. But you know what? When I'm on a Zoom call, I wear them. Do you know why? Because my clients don't want to see my butt. It is a hard stop. I have a feeling I would lose customers.
Yeah.
And, there are certain ways in which we have to conform.
I don't know, Misty. That's been getting a little trendy lately on social media. I don't know that you would lose clients.
As part of my Keep America Beautiful campaign, I'm keeping my cheeks covered. And that is that. But, again, consequences. I don't like to follow the rules. I recognize there are consequences. As you know, I might have a little bit of trouble with speeding. Brian says this every week. Sorry. I have a problem with speeding. When I get caught going 95, I have to talk fast, or else I'm going to have a major consequence that's going to affect my insurance.
Right.
I mean, all of these things. I could get points. I could lose my license. All of these things are consequences. And I choose to break the rules sometimes, not most of the time. Okay, sorry. But at the end of the day, I recognize what I'm doing. If I'm in an area where there are a lot of people around and I'm driving
Correct.
crazy, that makes me a dick because
Correct.
I could harm somebody. And I don't have the right to harm somebody else because I don't like rules.
Correct.
And that's what
And
I get back to.
and the other thing about the whole school thing is these are public schools, and there has to be, so by the fact that they are public schools, and no, they don't get it all right. They're not going to get it all right. We know that they don't get it all right. But public schools are for the communities. So the rules, the policies, the yada yada blase skippies, they have to be for the community.
Right.
And so we all know there's a reason why a store has the sign, no shirt, no shoes, no service. We know why, because enough somebodies came in hillbilly and they were like, okay, boo, let's just put the sign up. So schools have to look at the rights for the community. So when someone says, I don't want my kid going to school wearing a mask, right, you can make the choice to not be vaccinated. You can make the choice to not wear a mask. No one is actually telling you that you can't make that choice if you feel that strongly about it. But you should not impose your choice on a community circumstance. And that's the issue that I have. Don't get vaccinated. Okay, don't get vaccinated. Don't wear your mask. Okay. But you're not homeschooling your child. You are insisting that what you feel and believe should be imposed on a community. Because anyone who is a homeowner pays taxes. And the rules and policies of the school are to benefit the community as a whole. So again, you can homeschool your child. I believe that quite a few school districts actually may have some sort of an e-learning or hybrid component to them. Some do, some don't. But there are many ways to educate your child online, even if you're not homeschooling. There are many ways to educate your child online. So you can sit in that space where you don't want to be vaccinated, you don't want to vaccinate your 12 and up kids, and you don't want your children to wear a mask. But when you say that you should have a right to do what you want for your body, that is not your argument. You are trying to impose what you want to do for you and yours onto an entire community. Again, my tattoos and whatever folly may come my way does not affect my community. And that is the difference. And this is where that entitlement piece comes in. When you have communities where a certain group of entitled parents choose to push their agenda, that's how things get. Our school district started off as no masks. Masks were going to be optional. And our governor said, oh no. This is a mandate. He's like, this is a mandate. So just go ahead, step back, because this is a mandate. A school in Southern Illinois, because all of the, what do you call it? There were Southern Illinois, of course, Middle America, rural. There are schools that were like, no, we're not gonna follow the mandate. We oppose the gubernatorial mandate sorry, school was in session for 1 week and COVID said, bam, school's closed. They're on e-learning because the numbers are too high.
Oh, well, I wish I could say I'm shocked, but I read books. So, all right.
But do you?
I need to take a break from this for a minute. I want to talk about.
Oh, okay.
So remember, I sent this to you the other week. Remember, everybody that's been listening for weeks, we talked about the whole, the testosterone numbers in women athletes being judged. I know it's coming. Being judged at the Olympics, and them not allowing the world champion and some other competitors in a few of the track and field events to compete because their testosterone numbers were too high, and therefore, according to a study, that would give them an unfair advantage. Well, 2 weeks after the Olympics closed, a new study surfaced that said that the last study was bupkis. And having heightened numbers, testosterone numbers, did not give anybody an advantage, as far as they could tell. And that last study should have been abandoned and ignored, and that the IOC knew that anybody that had applied that study had been informed that initial study was bupkis. But they waited until 2 weeks after the Olympics to actually put this out there. Nikki, what say you?
So last summer, when we asked if the trend, when we asked if the othering of others was a trend, and we said we'd wait to see, what this looks like, because we know that this affected Black women. We know that this affected transgendered. It's the othering of others. It's the how can we keep them? How can we literally grab onto the back of their shirt and literally pull them back from the finish line? Figuratively and literally. How can we just grab them? And I will say it again. The white standard is mediocrity. And if you think about it, when we talk about these things, the Lori Loughlin's, the IOC, this is not someone saying, rise, elevate yourself to an Olympic standard based on the best of the best. Remember, the Olympics is not like, oh yeah, high school track. The Olympics is the best of the best. This is people who they eat, sleep, breathe, whatever this sport is. This is what they do. They watch film. This is the best of the best. Simone Biles, oh, you're so good that we're just going to call your stuff dangerous, and we can't score you for it. You have too much testosterone, even though this is how you came onto planet Earth, but your natural way of being gives you an edge.
Right.
This is just a yanking of the shirt. And I will say it again, and I don't really care. White people have no standard. Now, of course, there are some people that are in there and they do have a standard, and I get that, overstood. But in general, privileged, entitled white people don't have a standard. So they do what they do to thwart the standard of others. This is cheating. This is what this is. This is cheating.
Actually. You've stolen the ability of somebody who's worked all of their life to do something, to defend their title. Correct. And then given a, oops, my bad, afterwards. This isn't Clueless. I mean, the IOC isn't Cher. At the end of the day, these athletes were completely offended for no reason other than standing outside of the norm. And here's the thing about that. When we allow that kind of othering to happen, we have to be abundantly aware that at some point we are going to be the othered party.
Right.
Because this thing, it is a self-perpetuating funnel cloud of doom.
Yes.
At the end of the day, if you're born with this, maybe you're intersexed, maybe who knows what it is.
Right.
That is who you are.
Correct.
That is your physiology, and you've been that way. So all
That's
of a
your
sudden,
human makeup.
because a study came out in 2004, I believe it was, and somebody didn't look at it until 2012, and then didn't choose to apply it until 2016. How offensive is that? And at the end of the day, how minimizing, how you tell somebody to go out and do their best, and you're going to penalize them for something that they have no control over.
Control over. And you didn't not I don't know if it would have been a softer landing. There is no soft landing on this one, but 2 weeks,
2 weeks.
Not 2 months, not a year, 2 weeks.
And these
so you knew.
Appealed multiple times.
Right.
One of the appeals happened right not long after that other study came out.
And so that's the thing. It's, what do I say? I say that there's a lot of old guard in this country. There's a lot of old guard because this is the same IOC that really turned a blind eye to Larry Nassar.
Well, that is U.S. and this is world. This is the world body.
Right. Yes. And I get that. But everybody knows the rules. Everybody knows that these kids are traveling without their parents. Their parents are being told, you better sit your ass at home if you want this kid to make it. Everybody knows the playbook.
Well, I want to take that further though, Nikki, because your point is sound. Think about it.
Think about further.
The Russian team that was not allowed.
You mean what are the letters? I don't even know.
I don't know.
The SOBs?
The SOBs. That's kind of like Russia, but not exactly.
Right, the SOBs. That's what we're going to call them.
That's it. The SOB team that had the same outfits, the same color, flag, the whole nine as Russia. They were permitted to break the rules. And they had athletes that were there that were actually suspected of doping while at the games.
It's all of it. So I understand that one is national and one is world, but everybody knows the playbook. And everybody's turning the page, or they're writing, oh, do you need a new play? Or they're writing in their own, they're annotating. Maybe you should do this like this. It was sex trafficking. We're going to call it what it was. It was sex trafficking under the guise of sport. But there's a lot of old guard in this country. There's a lot of old guard. And that is why, what are these? Gen Zs? Yeah, Gen Zs. They're like, yeah, no. They don't align with a lot. There's going to be assholes where there's assholes. There's going to be entitled kids everywhere we go. Yes. But everybody's complaining about wearing a mask because of COVID. Shit. In like 5 minutes, we're going to be wearing a mask because there's no freaking ozone layer.
Or fires.
Right.
Look at our friends on the West Coast. They're suffering too.
We're in the middle of a hellacious storm season. Storm season ends in November, people. Storm season ends in November. It doesn't end at the end of summer. It ends in November. And so we have all of this catastrophic devastation that's going on. It's like you're worried about not you're worried about wearing a mask because so that we don't cross infect each other. What about when it has to actually be, hopefully that Tesla dude will get those gas masks down to, just like like a little it's like
Yeah, they might though, but they'll be $12,000 each, and then we have an access problem. This is why I ask, is this a societal problem? Has the society gotten so caught up in the me's of the existence that it can't see the we's?
it can't even see the we's for its own enclave, its own little nuclear family. There's people who are fake rich or practice being rich or play at being rich.
Rich
Everybody's
training.
not right. Everybody's not going to Red Rock. Everybody ain't gonna fit.
Yeah.
And so, everybody's not gonna have their underground, their shelter. We're all gonna have to live on this planet that we are. What are you doing, Misty?
Apparently there was a bat behind me.
Was that Glenn? Hey,
Yeah.
there's a bat.
He's not even laughing, so it was really there, but I didn't see it.
No, he was up here. He moved. He went over to
Okay. Not yet. And I was attacked by a raccoon out here last year. Okay, please.
You were not attacked by a raccoon. You were using that raccoon as a footstool.
He was an ottoman, but that's okay.
See how the story just gets embellished and embellished and
it could have attacked me. I'm delicate.
Compassion is what you teach when you understand that you're part of a group. Everywhere we go, we are a part of a group. So what I mean by that is if you get on a city bus, now I don't ride the city bus, y'all know I don't ride the city bus. But for the people who ride the city bus, when you get on the city bus and there's other people on the bus, you're in a group. If something goes down on that bus, tornado, earthquake, whatever, fill in the blank, flash flood, wherever you are, whatever that is, right? That's your tribe in that moment in time.
Make sure that bin is closed. But there can be no compassion without empathy. And
right.
If we aren't able to look at the people around us and see their value, their importance, see that they are entitled to a space on this planet and to breathe the air and to survive,
right.
to thrive, then we certainly can't be compassionate. I'm not compassionate toward this pen. It's just a pen. That is, I think, the problem. To me, people don't see each other as individual sentient beings. They see each other as somebody that can do something for them.
They wait until everyone is in devastation. But the level of devastation, can you hear him?
Mm-hmm.
Aries, Nico.
I mean, it's like Distraction Jackson tonight.
People wait until there are high levels of devastation. And you're standing in the middle of chaos and the apocalypse, and everyone goes, none of us have anything. And then people will rise to the occasion. Not everyone does. Well, that's why Mad Max is a series, right? But a lot of people look at high levels of devastation and then they go, oh, wait, we're a group. We're a group. Okay. Except the level of devastation is increasing. It's not just, oh my gosh, we're in the middle of a pandemic and we should all come together. No, everyone has to have their house completely wrecked and demolished for a 200-mile span before people will go, oh, I guess we all really are in the same boat.
Because it's so normalized at this point.
Right.
It's also normalized. Do you remember when you first heard about Columbine?
Yes, I do. And I know where you're going.
I was thinking about this today because I was so gripped by that. I was driving to work. I had to pull over. I had to listen to NPR like nonstop. I went to work. I sat there like a zombie listening to the news because I just couldn't wrap my mind around this at all.
Right. Right.
And now you hear about a school shooting, and what do you say? Whew, only 8.
Or people say, what is the number? What is the number? What makes a mass shooting? That I've started hearing people saying that.
Yes. Well, it's
I've
only
started,
3
yeah.
people. I'm like, oh, so it's only 3 souls lost, only 3 families affected. That's okay then.
But it's not even just that. But it's like, it's not just 3 souls. It's 3 souls lost. But it's hundreds of people affected. It's every kid who has to walk back into a school after a mass shooting.
It's the community.
It's every parent who is like, oh my gosh, really? Wait, really? Wait, really? You want to go back to school? And it's kids who have a level of resilience that they shouldn't have to have. They shouldn't have to adamantium up because some kid is angry. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it. All these dudes are white.
Coping
And
skills.
why again, compassion. Black women don't walk into places shooting up people. Certainly not schools. I'm not gonna say that it's never happened. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But get out your pen and paper.
But we have consequences.
Yes.
We are much more likely to have to endure consequences as these things happen. It's different. Like the guy who was part of the gang that was going to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, the guy that turned state's evidence, he got 6 years. Now, granted, to me, that's not enough, but it's sure as shit not a consequence when you compare it to these insurrectionists who got 16 minutes, if that. So
it's not enough. It's not enough. She was not only a political figure, it was planned. This wasn't just like heat of the moment. She's getting on my nerves. I'm going to drive by. No, they planned it. They sat and thought and planned it. The Capitol didn't do anything but just let people know, if you're white, you're right.
No consequences.
We have, speaking of the Capitol, if Robin is still on here, she may have heard about this. We have a female police officer who was suspended from Lodge 7, if I'm saying it correctly, which is the Fraternal Order of Police Union. She was suspended for 6 months because on her own time, she supported Black Lives Matter. She went out in front of the lodge, knelt, raised a fist, took a picture, posted it on her social media. The lodge president suspended her. She was not allowed to defend herself. She was not given due process. This is going on right now. Her suspension ends at the end of this month. There is a Chicago police officer. Oh, and when they cited the policy that she went against, it wasn't the policy, it was the spirit of the preamble of the Constitution of the lodge. There's no definitive number where they can say you violated this piece of the lodge's Constitution. It was the spirit of. Right. There is a Chicago police officer who was there on January 6th. He has not been suspended. He was initially represented by the lodge attorney, by
Unbelievable.
the fraternal, by the union's attorney, and um, he has had his act was criminal, and there is a line in the Constitution, not the preamble of the Constitution. There is a line in the Constitution where he committed a criminal act and should be banned from the union. And in Chicago, you can join different unions. Like, even though, like, there are police officers who join, like, the teachers union, or, like, you can do that. So it's not like,
Interesting.
but they are fully supporting him. And this Black female officer who has been on the force for 26 years in October was suspended. She went down to Springfield to plead her case, to appeal the decision, the suspension, and she was told verbatim they did not, her speaking on behalf of herself was not warranted. They did not allow her to speak on behalf. She was completely denied due process. And so I just heard this on NPR last week, and when we first started speaking about compassion, the first thing that I thought about was people wanted all of this to be over, whether it was COVID, whether it was the racial injustice, whatever, right? People just wanted all of this to be over. And it's not over. And it's not over because people won't take a stand. They won't look at the community. It's more than just a lack of compassion, but certainly there's a lack of compassion there. And what it's done, in my opinion, is it has slingshotted those who feel entitled even further down the road, because they see that there are no consequences for their action. They have become more emboldened, which means if they're, to say that there's a lack of compassion would imply that there was some to begin with. They don't have to have compassion. They don't even have to, it doesn't have to occur to them, because they watch repeatedly while others continue to be othered, and on a much grander scale.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the only way things get done is to actively work to change them, finish them, put it to bed, etc. If you aren't willing to do the work, if you're going to sit by and kick the can, then you're going to stay in the cycle of whatever it is for a lot longer, because there's nothing there to break the cycle. And
Correct.
that's the piece, right? That's the crux of it. The crux of it at the end of the day is, for all of it, for the racial strife, for the sexually predatory behavior, for racism, prejudice, etc. All of these things stay the same. They stay the same because the people that are in control, the people that steer the bus, know that the people in the back aren't going to put forth the effort to change the direction.
Robin Robin says the Chicago Police Union president said officers kneeling with protesters could be kicked out because the gesture is against the policy of the Fraternal Order Police Organization. From what I heard on the interview, Robin, it was if they were on duty. And then the current president of the FOP, prior to his becoming the president, there were two other younger officers in 2016, 2020. No, 2016, I'm right, who knelt in support of Black Lives Matter. They were not reprimanded. The current president, who was then just an officer, posted on his site with a flag, an American flag, but without saying the word Trump, was implying full support for Trump. The female officer who has been suspended, she's stating, she's like, it's not supposed to be political. The union is supposed to be to support the police officers for contract negotiations, legally, yada, yada, blah, skipping. She's like, it's, yes, thank you. You know, I never know anybody's names. Thank you, Robin. Because I was astonished. It was one of the things, right when you started asking me about this, it was one of the things I listened to this woman on NPR and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, they're done. I was like, white people are done. They're done. They thought this was going to be over. It isn't. I guess we're supposed to be okay that George Floyd's murderer was imprisoned. That's supposed to be our cookie. That's supposed to, okay, you got that one, so we're good. That's how I take it.
Well, put Breonna Taylor's killers in jail, and then maybe we can have a discussion. But at the end of the day,
exactly.
None of it matters. It doesn't. None of it matters because, as we say all the time, we can fight, we can fight, we can fight. We're not in control. We can't make changes on our own. And, you know, if the compassion fatigue has extended to matters of race, we're never going to find equity. And if you can't find equity, none of this shit gets better because you're not going to put a bunch of people back in the box. It's not going to happen.
Right. And it's going to be the same thing. It's going, but I do see allies, and we know that there are, you know, people are in different stages of their allyship. And someone who wouldn't have even asked a question or wouldn't have even come to ThoughtFLOW a year ago is maybe on this show. Someone who wouldn't have even come up to a Black person because they don't know what to say, right? They don't know what to say. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to foot and mouth it. And so they just kind of go, okay, well, I don't like people being mean to people. I don't want to be racist, but I don't know what to say. Maybe that person now takes the step forward and says, what can I do? I don't know what to do. What can I do? Please don't bite my head off, right? I do think that there are people who are really starting to see, wow, this really isn't fair. Wow, this is an egregious miscarriage of justice. Wow, this has been going on for this long. And these people are, yeah, I said these people, Black people, brown people, they're still standing and they get up every day and they know that they have to face this. Some way, somehow, even if it's 30 seconds, they're going to deal with some BS. And they do this every day. And I am just now realizing this. There are people who are doing that. And I think a lot of them are young. I think a lot of young people, because a lot of our young people, they are in groups that are so multicultural. They don't have an issue with someone being transgendered. They don't have an issue with someone being asexual. They don't have an issue with someone being poly. They don't care.
Right.
And it's very extreme when one of their peers does. You can almost see that person or their teeny tiny little group, and don't get me wrong, I understand these teeny tiny little groups can sometimes have really big fights. But a lot of our young people, they want the difference. They want the cultural experience.
I think that's true. And I think it's a little early to tell with Gen Z. I do, because, you know, again, with all of the things that we're seeing riled up in society right now, we know that they don't want to be like the boomers at all. And,
right,
you know, we're their parents and they don't want to be like us either. So You know,
Not yet. They just don't know it.
not yet. Well, and I'm encouraged, like Robin says, there's hope with them. I'm encouraged by the fact that they do choose, at least at this time, to march to the beat of their own drummer. But we all know that the people who have the power, those people at the top of the hierarchy, will do what it takes to keep it. And I feel like the next few years, I say it all the time, I feel like the next years are going to be pivotal in our failure to succumb to the depths of it, or we're just going to keep plummeting down until we hit the bottom. And what the hell does that look like? But to have to lay that on the hands of babes, or at the hands of babes, kick the can back to the Gen Zs is so unfair to them. They're going to have to deal with climate change because nobody else will do it. They're going to have to deal with addiction and opiates and allowing people to just be who they are, mature, expand, excel. They're going to have to take care of the older generations that are going to be broken, busted, and have no money because of all of the poor management that's happening at the higher age ends.
Right.
So to then say, well, and by the way, you've got to cure the rest of society too. So get rid of this race thing, get rid of this sex thing, and hop to it, kiddos, because we're not going to have Social Security either. So chop, chop. It's unfair.
It's unfair, but I don't think they may be the catalyst, but I don't think that they will do it alone. I don't think that they will do it alone. I think that they will be the change that comes bubbling up from below. And I think that they're just going to be like, no, look, no, you guys are screwing this crap up. Get it together. We don't have to wait for them to be adults. The catastrophic damage that is being done to this planet, we won't have to worry about any of the stuff that you just said, because Mother Nature is like, look, everybody, it's like, and again, I hesitated to say this, but I'm gonna say it. What is going on in Kabul is horrific. It's horrific. And I'm going to put that over there. But we are a shit show ourselves. And I don't mean the racial stuff. I mean, we have food deserts here. We have people starving in this country. We have people who are wondering how long they will have a roof over our heads in this country. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, in no way am I diminishing what's going on in Kabul, because that shit's just real. And then I know some people were like, why did we pull out? And I'm like, well, maybe you don't know that most of the front line in places like that is Black, brown people, but I digress. And young people. It's very multi-layered, right? It's very multifaceted. But I'm like, how do we feel that we can be of assistance and service to a country when our own country is? We're not making sure people get fed. We told people, yeah, we're in the middle of a pandemic, get your butt out there and work. We're not making sure that people, there was no moratorium on rent. There was no moratorium for landlords. Misty, you and I are very well versed in this. You expect people to live a year without good employment and be able to catch up? You put them in a position where they have to catch up on rent?
Which is impossible.
That's my point. You said as long as you pay something, you can't be kicked out. But at some point, it's due.
Yeah.
We have, in my opinion, we have refugees in this country.
100%. 1000%.
And this is not that old thing that some people like to do. I am not going to compare Middle Passage slavery and the Holocaust. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to say that they're more refugee than what we might have as refugees here. I'm not going to say that. But what I am going to say is, how do you step over yours to go do others?
I think
I am
completely different issues. I really do.
I want to be really clear about this. I am not talking about the evacuation of people whose lives are clearly in imminent danger.
Sure.
I'm talking about the past 20 years. I'm not talking about the past week. I just want to be really clear about that, because obviously we know, we have seen the pictures, we have heard the stories. There are people whose lives are in imminent danger.
Right.
We know this, and we know, the laws for women. We know this. We know that women, especially anyone who was a sympathizer, we know this. So I want to just be really, really clear about that. But you think that they are two different issues?
I do. I think they're two different issues because, again, America, the colonization that we do, it's one thing if we're doing it to ourselves in our own land, in our own country, it blows. It's completely terrible. But then to go to somebody else's land, somebody else's country, trash the place, and it wasn't in good shape before.
Right.
You have a society that is fundamentally, structurally, systematically different. Hello there. You have a society that's completely different from ours. And you're going to then go over there and you're going to say, we're going to help you build something that is more palatable to you, regardless of who you were to get there to that point in time in the first place.
But is that what they said?
Nation building is nation building. You
right,
don't go into a form. We had a job to do. We should have pulled out when we were done with the job. We stayed. And at the end of the day, we did this before. And did we need to pull out 1,000%, 1,000,000%? Because we've got drama, trauma, and disaster happening here on our own soil. I am with you. But again, I can tell you this much. If I saw you come the first time and I saw what you did, and then I saw you leave, and then you come back, and it's all looking the same, walks like a duck, talks like a duck. Oh, and P.S., the last regime of losers, weirdos, banana people are absolutely still in control of all of the outside provinces on the lateral borders of the country. And
that was the weird part. That was the weird part. I was like,
because at the end of the day, in my opinion, it was so impossible what we were trying to do, and we sold them. It really upsets me. We sold them this false bill of goods.
Yep.
And you listen to the diplomats because you listen to NPR, I'm sure you heard it, but they were talking to the diplomats that are here who are like, I serve the Republic of Afghanistan. I don't serve the Taliban, and I will die before I serve the Taliban. And if anything happens and I have to go back, I will die. That level of conviction, because they knew, and they're not going back. And to say, well, we had to pull out and we got shit to do over here, again, it had to happen.
Right.
But I can't blame them when people say, oh, well, they should have been standing up for themselves. They should have been fighting themselves. They knew what was happening when we pulled out, and it is happening right now. Anybody that supported us is being killed in the streets. Yeah. I wouldn't have supported us either, and that's that.
Right.
I get a little bit upset about it. I need to stop watching.
No, because it's frustrating. No, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because what did it lack? It lacked compassion.
And a plan.
Well,
I mean, shit. Have a plan. But we didn't have a plan. Colin Powell, he said, they called it the Pottery Barn principle. You break it, you bought it. Back when we were going into the Gulf and when we were going into Afghanistan. And it applies to this day, and it will always apply. And at the end of the day, we don't have the stability in our own country, nor do we have the mettle to stick through something like that. So we shouldn't have done it.
Right.
If you want to say it's the Bin Laden thing, okay, when did Bin Laden get wiped out? 2012? That's when we should have left.
Yeah.
It's 2021.
Yeah.
And money, look at it though. We were subsidizing the existence of that country.
Yes.
For 20 years, we have been paying 80% of their expenses. 80%.
Right. And that's you know, that's my issue is that's my issue. That's my issue. That's my
These
issue.
aren't the droids you're looking for.
That's my issue.
I think it's fair.
Because, you know, and it's because you want to have compassion because it's like it's a bunch of people being moved around like chess pieces, and at the end of the day they're human beings.
They're souls. They're people.
They're people, and they're being moved around by chess pieces, and it just brings me back to this old guard needs to get them out.
Peace out, old guard.
But we see it in so many different things, right? We see it in so many different aspects of our lives where so much is run by an old guard, an old way, a way that really just does not suit. And you see people clamoring to hold on to the bits and pieces that they feel make them relevant. You know, I saw something that was just, I was like, oh my gosh, that's astounding. We talk about people getting older, having diminished capacity, or just getting older, and all of the things that come with getting older. But yet our country is run by old white men. But why doesn't that apply to them? Why do they get to assign that someone else is going to lose their faculties, but you happen to be just fine? There's a lot of old guard. And they, if I just had like freaking, Mary Poppins, and I could just whisk them away and, bop them upside the head and be done with them. Or,
That's why, having your ear to the ground in your own community is so important, because changing the old guard doesn't happen from the top down. It happens from the bottom up. The only way to make things move forward rather than circle the drain is going to be involvement. I can't tell you how many people I know say to me, oh, I don't watch the news, and I don't know what's going on in my community. I'm going to sit at home and crochet. Well, that's super cute, and I'm happy that your doily making is a success. But at the end of the day, where is that going to create a shift? You don't like what's happening in your community, so you choose to withdraw from it rather than to engage it. At the end of the day, if we're not engaging, we are reinforcing.
Correct. Your silence is complicit.
Exactly. And that's where we are. That's what has to change. All of it.
I'm going to say this as a final note. One of my kids plays football, and the little like phone tree thing. Yeah, that's what I'm called, the phone tree. They call it the chain gang. And when I first saw it, I was like,
I'm done. Let the bat.
I was like, oh. Then maybe I didn't read that right. So yeah. So then I said, I'm gonna say something, and I was like, oh no, I'm not. Because I, as a Black parent, Javon, how are you? I, as a Black parent, have to decide if saying something is going to have an adverse effect on my child who swears that football is the end all be all. And then the Martinis, Misty, said, somebody white has to say it. But I have to go figure out which somebody white can say it. Somebody that I trust. I just met these parents. So I would task you all, if you are white, these are circumstances that Black, brown people deal with on a regular basis. It would be like the equivalent of if they called it the cracker chain.
And there's no snacks.
And there's no snacks. You know, or the honky chain. Like, it's so disturbing that they call it the chain gang. And like literally in the athletic meeting, I was like, because the coach said it one time, and I was like, okay, I can't be on the camera because this is like disturbing. Somebody white has to say it. But somebody white has to say it because they recognize that there's something wrong with it. So I task you, white people, go out and listen to certain things and understand certain things have a bad history. And they shouldn't be used as cute little fluffy terms of endearment. And you have to be the person, because if I say it, I'm the angry Black mom, and I don't want this to have an adverse effect on my kid, because I say you shouldn't be using this because it's kind of got some racial overtones. Go educate yourself and go out and be the person who says, why are we using this term that has bad history? You have to say it. You, as the white person, you have to stand up in the Victoria's Secret when a Black woman is being assaulted. No, she didn't touch her, but a Black woman was being emotionally and psychologically assaulted by a white woman.
Chased around the store.
She chased her around the store, and all of the white women just stood there and continued to check out. You have to be the person who goes up to the police officer and says, no, this woman is freaking batshit crazy, and she is psychologically and mentally and emotionally abusing this woman. It is not this white woman who is the victim. It is this woman. You have to be the one who says it, because it has weight. It has weight. It has power. It has substance. We can say it until the cows come home. But you see what happens. You see what happens. Philando Castile legally could carry a gun with conceal and carry, and he was shot dead in his car, even after admitting that he had a gun. Yet,
no punishment, no punitive measures whatsoever against the officer.
No punitive measures against the office. But white men can stand and shut down the capital of Michigan and just stand there with assault rifles and just stand there in broad daylight. No one even asked them if you have a permit. Do you have the right to carry this gun legally in an open forum? They weren't even asked. You opening your mouth, your white mouth, and saying out loud, this is not okay. In these teeny tiny circumstances, it has power. If we can't see the light, then you cannot be a beacon. You going home and turning on your iPhone flashlight and being like, woo, I'm a light. Woo, yeah, I'm a light.
I'm a beacon in my bedroom.
I'm a beacon. No, if nobody else can see your light, then you're not a beacon. So you have to think about that. Yes, using your privilege to dismantle the system that gave it to you. Yes.
Facts.
It's like your kid saying, I need to be off punishment right now. And you being like, yeah, how's that working for you? It's like,
Well, I think that's the
so,
problem, though, is that a lot of people just go for it.
yeah, you have to open your mouth. You have to speak. You have to see when something is. Well, do you know how many times? I don't know if you guys have seen that video with that woman in the Vicky's Secret trying to get her free underwear. She was trying to get her free panties. Do you know how many times that could have been stopped? Not even de-escalated. There were significant times throughout that video, of which I watched all of it. I haven't watched the update yet, but I watched all of the video. There were so many times that could have just been stopped. Just stopped. Someone could have walked up and said, what you were doing is not okay.
Yeah.
What you are doing, you are exacting your privilege on this woman, and you need to stop.
In a violent way.
Yes.
You are
This woman,
perpetuating violence.
yes. So if you take away one thing, of course, there are many things that we hope you take away. Go out, don't turn a blind eye. See what you know is there. You know it's there. You see it. You've seen it. And it is, I get it. It is scary to be in a circumstance where you see something wrong and you're like, oh my gosh, or what if they come after me? Or what if they do this? But what if another Black body gets laying in the street because you didn't say something?
Or, take race out of it. What if a coach is doing bad
Yep.
things, is abusing
Yep.
a student a child under their care? There's plenty of ways
Yep.
that we have privilege that we don't own or at least acknowledge. And when we don't do that, we are again allowing ourselves to perpetuate harm on people who could really benefit from a helping hand. It is so amazing when you watch some of these Karen videos, and some of them, you see how Karen completely shifts her behavior when she realizes that she's being watched and recorded. Then, she goes from aggressor to victim, and that speaks volumes in itself.
Yep.
That is a way to de-escalate a situation. But, it's uncomfortable. I want you to feel as uncomfortable when you walk away from it. When you walk away without acknowledging, as you should feel when you're watching it, or worse, as you can imagine the person that's enduring it feels. Because if you can put yourself in their shoes for 12 seconds, you know that you do not want to be in those shoes.
Right.
And maybe you'll do something different.
Be kind, be generous, give love, receive love,
Chips.
and give it back to the universe.
Chips are love. So keep an eye out, guys. We've got a few schedule changes coming out that we didn't even have a chance to talk about, but it's like 9:09 and everyone is tired.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Starving. But yeah, so schedule changes coming up, but don't worry, we're not going away. ThoughtFLOW's here. Yeah, we're so glad that you are back and we're back. And we look forward to seeing you next week. But next week is going to be on a different day. So, like I said, keep an eye out. We will talk to you soon. Thank you for being here and flowing with us.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Oh, it's soggy. Damn it.